Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's story? Like there's an invisible hand guiding your choices, influencing your relationships, even shaping your happiness, often for the worse? What if I told you that this invisible force, often hidden in plain sight, is rooted in the deepest parts of your psyche, a wound so profound that Carl Jung himself warned us about its silent, insidious power? Jung famously declared, "You will never heal until you face this aspect of your mother. She is still within you, even if she is thousands of miles away, even if she is no longer alive." He wasn't just talking about your biological mother. He was talking about something far more ancient, far more universal, the mother archetype. And here's the shocking truth: you will never truly heal until you confront the very thing you've been programmed to avoid, the shadow mother. In this video, we're diving into the forbidden territory of your unconscious mind. We're going to explore why your healing journey might feel blocked, how the mother complex holds your soul captive, and most importantly, the painful but liberating steps Carl Jung revealed to break free. This is the truth your inner child never dared to speak. Part 1. The Cosmic Mother. Understanding the Archetype. When we talk about mother, what immediately comes to mind? Is it the woman who raised you? Your personal experiences, good or bad? For Jung, the concept of mother transcends individual biography. He saw her not just as a person, but as a foundational archetype, an ancient universal image deeply embedded in the human psyche, independent of personal experience, stretching back to the dawn of humanity. Think of it like a blueprint of all mothering, all creation, all nurturing, and also all that can devour or suffocate. The mother archetype is a psychic pattern inherited by all humanity. It holds both life-giving and life-devouring aspects. It's not tied to your individual mother's history or culture. Instead, it's a transpersonal image that can manifest in countless ways. Through our biological mother, religious figures, symbolic art, or even Mother Earth herself. She embodies both the nurturing, protecting, loving side of motherhood and the suffocating, devouring, overwhelming side. This duality Jung called the paradox of the Great Mother. For many of us, especially those with unhealed mother wounds, this archetype gets dangerously entangled with personal trauma. Jung warned that without awareness, we confuse our personal mother with the archetypal mother, trapping ourselves in a distorted psychic loop. Have you ever noticed repeating painful childhood patterns in your adult relationships? Always seeking care or validation, yet simultaneously terrified of abandonment or being consumed. This is the archetypal mother at play. Jung described the mother archetype as ambivalent, both good and evil, creative and destructive, nurturing and annihilating. In myths, you see this in goddesses like Kali, who brings life and death. In dreams, she might appear as a gentle, comforting figure or as a monstrous being devouring the dreamer. This archetype is inherently bipolar. When the psyche becomes unbalanced, favoring one side and repressing the other, it leads to psychic fragmentation. If you see your mother or mother figure as perfectly good or perfectly bad, you're caught in a projection trap, unable to separate inner reality from the outer world. Why can't you heal until you understand this? Jung stressed that true healing of the mother wound can only occur when we recognize that our relationship with the mother isn't merely personal, but deeply archetypal. Many of the wounds we believe stem from our mother are not just individual actions, but expressions of a deeper collective pattern. If you view your mother solely through the prism of your personal experiences, her flaws, her neglect, her smothering, you remain trapped in the narrow narrative of the ego. But when you step into the symbolic realm, you see her as a vessel through which the ancient forces of the mother archetype express themselves, in both their nurturing and destructive forms. This shift in perspective is radical, but absolutely necessary. It allows the psyche to move from blame to understanding, from personal suffering to archetypal awareness. Without this shift, healing remains superficial, limited to cognitive or emotional levels, never reaching the deeper unconscious where the mother archetype resides. Jung warned that over-identifying with the personal mother leads to psychic imprisonment. In such cases, the mother becomes a prison for the ego. The individual remains in a state of eternal childhood, dependence, and victimhood. He observed that those who fail to confront the archetypal dimension of the mother often suffer from chronic resentment, excessively idealize their mother, deny her flaws, repeat toxic relationship patterns, attract partners who reactivate old emotional wounds, or project repressed aspects of the mother archetype onto others, such as bosses, authority figures, or spiritual teachers, thus continuing the cycle of unconscious entanglement. In Jung's words, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power, and where the will to power is paramount, love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other." The mother, wound if left unacknowledged, festers in the unconscious, becoming a hidden force that controls behaviors, sabotages personal growth, and corrodes one's relationship with femininity, nurturing, and creative power itself. Your personal mother is the first mirror of yourself. It is crucial to understand that the personal mother is the first mirror through which a child encounters themselves in the world. The way a mother responds to a child's needs, emotions, and expressions is internalized, shaping the child's first experience of whether they are seen, valued, and loved, or rejected, ignored, and devalued. Jung described this phase as the mother complex, where the child's developing ego is profoundly shaped by the quality of the early relationship with the mother. If the mother is emotionally unavailable, intrusive, or neglectful, the child often internalizes these experiences as proof of their own inadequacy or unworthiness. This internalized voice of the rejecting or suffocating mother does not disappear with age. It becomes part of the individual's inner landscape, silently dictating how someone sees themselves, their worth, their body, their right to take up space, to speak, to succeed, or to love. Unless an individual becomes aware of this internalized mother figure, they will unconsciously continue to cycle through the same patterns, hoping for healing from the outside or remaining trapped in cycles of self-sabotage and self-rejection. Jung emphasized that the mother wound is not a purely personal issue. It is a transgenerational, collective inheritance. The unprocessed pain of the mother is often passed down from generation to generation, like psychic DNA. Mothers unconsciously transmit their own wounds, fears, and limitations to their children, who then carry them forward unless they awaken to the deeper truth. That's why Jung insisted that healing the mother wound isn't about fixing the mother, but about transforming the relationship to the inner mother image, the complex of memories, associations, feelings, and projections that lives within the psyche. He wrote, "The greatest burden a child has to bear is the unlived life of its parents." To heal, we must confront not only our personal history but also the ancestral stories embedded within us, to break the unconscious cycle of suffering. Jung also linked the mother archetype to larger cosmic symbols of earth, nature, and the great unconscious. When we have a distorted relationship with the mother archetype, we often project this onto such overarching systems. We feel alienated from the earth, exploit or fear nature, dread the unconscious and perceive it as chaotic, dangerous, or overwhelming. We reject the feminine principle within ourselves and in society, leading to an over-identification with the masculine, rational, and controlling aspects of the psyche. Thus, the personal mother wound becomes a mirror of a collective split between humanity and the Great Mother, the earth, nature, the unconscious. If the mother wound is not recognized at an archetypal level, the consequences are enormous. Lifelong struggles with identity, self-worth, and belonging. The inability to fully individuate and free oneself from the orbit of the mother complex. Chronic dissatisfaction in relationships, career, or on a spiritual level. An alienation from the inner feminine, from creativity, intuition, and emotional depth. Jung saw this as a psychological illness of our time. Modern humanity is cut off from its roots, its physicality, its heritage, and its connection to the earth, trapped in an ego-driven world that denies the power and wisdom of the mother archetype. As long as you don't realize that your relationship with your mother is a gateway to the deeper mysteries of the psyche, you remain trapped on the surface of your wounds. You will try to heal with your mind, through temporary solutions, or by blaming your mother. But none of these paths will lead you to true inner healing, which Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the unconscious into conscious life. You cannot truly heal until you face the archetypal mother image, not your personal mother, but the great, mysterious, and powerful psychic force she embodies. Part 2. The Shadow Mother, Breaking Free from the Psychic Prison. In Jungian psychology, the shadow mother is one of the most misunderstood and feared dimensions of the psyche. Unlike the nurturing and protective aspect of the mother archetype, the shadow mother embodies the devouring, manipulative, and suffocating forces that unconsciously trap the ego and hinder its growth on the path to individuation. Jung observed that the dark aspect of the mother archetype is unavoidable because it is rooted in the duality of the archetypal image itself. The failure to consciously confront and integrate the shadow mother leads to a psychic imprisonment, where the individual remains trapped in a cycle of unconscious dependence, fear, guilt, and self-sabotage. The shadow mother, as a devouring force, is a recurring motif in myths and cultures. In Greek mythology, Demeter, the archetype of the nurturing mother, transforms into the devouring mother when she refuses to release her daughter Persephone into the adult world. In religious symbols, the dragon often represents the devouring mother, swallowing heroes who dare to venture beyond the protective but confining boundaries of childhood. Psychologically, the shadow mother appears when maternal energy goes beyond its natural bounds, when it does not allow the child to individuate, to set boundaries, and to go their own way. This type of mother demands loyalty, obedience, and submission, often disguised as love, care, or self-sacrifice. In this dynamic, the child experiences the mother not as a nurturing figure, but as an all-consuming force threatening to extinguish the burgeoning self. According to Jung, the shadow mother rarely acts directly. Her influence is subtle, hidden, and deeply rooted in the unconscious. Common manifestations in adult life include chronic self-doubt and self-criticism internalized through the mother's controlling voice, fear of autonomy and independence coupled with an unconscious desire for security and approval, self-sabotage whenever success or individuation beckons. Choosing partners or authority figures who repeat the energy of the devouring mother, controlling, manipulative, or emotionally suffocating, and an overwhelming sense of guilt or fear of betrayal when setting boundaries or asserting oneself. Jung emphasized that the shadow mother thrives on the fear of abandonment and the individual's unconscious belief that they cannot survive without the mother's approval or control. Perhaps the most destructive effect of the shadow mother is the psychological infantilization of the adult self. Jung warned that many people, especially those with unresolved mother wounds, remain psychologically dependent on maternal energy, even in adulthood. This dependency isn't always physical. Many people outwardly separate from their mother, but remain inwardly entangled with her. They live in constant fear of rejection or disapproval. Even if the mother is no longer alive, decisions, relationships, careers, and self-image continue to be unconsciously influenced by the need to conform to the mother's unspoken expectations. This is the prison of the infantile ego, which Jung described as a regressive state where the adult self refuses to grow, preferring to remain in the familiar, even if that familiar is suffocating or abusive. Jung argued that the psyche often prefers the known hell to unknown freedom. The shadow mother embodies this known hell, predictable, familiar, and paradoxically comforting in its oppression. Many people prefer to remain in toxic patterns, abusive relationships, or unfulfilling roles because they mirror the emotional terrain of their early relationship with the mother. In such cases, suffering becomes a form of loyalty to the mother, a way of maintaining the psychic connection even in the absence of love or security. Jung was convinced that as long as the individual remains unaware of this dynamic, they will unconsciously recreate the conditions of their psychic imprisonment, believing they are acting out of free will, while in reality they are playing out a deeply ingrained archetypal script. One of the shadow mother's strongest weapons is the guilt complex. Jung observed that guilt is the psychological glue that binds the adult self to the mother complex. This guilt is often irrational, deeply rooted in the unconscious, and manifests in internal phrases like, "I am bad if I set boundaries," "I am selfish if I prioritize myself," "I am ungrateful if I honor my own needs," or "I betray her if I go my own way." This guilt is not just emotional, it is archetypal. It harkens back to the ancient human fear of being cast out of the tribe, of losing the maternal protective space that symbolizes life itself. For many, this guilt is so overwhelming that they sabotage their own happiness, suppress their desires, or endure emotional abuse just to avoid the unbearable pain of perceived betrayal. Jung described this as the mother's shadow occupying the child's ego. Guilt is used as a psychic leash to exert control, manipulate, and prevent individuation. Paradoxically, Jung also argued that despite her terrifying nature, the shadow mother plays a crucial role in the process of individuation. She is the guardian of the unconscious, the dragon guarding the treasure of the self. Only by confronting the devouring mother can one gain access to the deeper layers of one's own psyche, to creativity, inner strength, and the authentic self. In myths, the hero must not only encounter the dragon to defeat it, but to reclaim that part of themselves that the dragon, the shadow mother, holds captive. The right to exist, to feel, to create, to love, and to live freely. Therefore, Jung believed that the shadow mother must not be destroyed, but integrated, her power acknowledged, her darkness confronted, and her control over the ego consciously released. Jung encouraged engaging with the figure of the shadow mother through active imagination and inner dialogue. This process involves visualizing the devouring mother as an inner figure, conducting a conscious dialogue, expressing suppressed emotions like anger, fear, grief, or resentment, listening to the voice of the shadow mother, understanding her fears, wounds, and distorted love, acknowledging childhood pain and anger without judgment, and reclaiming the right to an independent life free from guilt and fear. This path is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths about the mother and oneself. Confronting the shadow mother is, at its core, an act of psychological dying and rebirth. It is the death of the dependent child and the birth of the autonomous adult self. Jung warned that this process is often accompanied by profound inner turmoil, depression, existential crises, and grief. The old structures of the psyche crumble. The ego is left vulnerable, naked, and disoriented. Yet, it is precisely through this dark night of the soul that a new self emerges, a sovereign self, free from the mother's psychic influence, capable of forging its own path and embodying its true identity. The shadow mother is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a force to be integrated. She represents the unloved, unhealed, and repressed parts of the personal and archetypal mother within the psyche. As long as the individual does not confront her, they remain trapped in unconscious patterns of dependence, fear, and guilt. But those who face her open the door to the deeper treasures of the self, autonomy, creativity, and wholeness. This confrontation is not just personal healing. It is a spiritual initiation into the deeper mysteries of the soul and the archetypal forces that shape our human journey. Part 3. The Inner Mother, the Silent Dictator. Within. In the intricate tapestry of Jung's depth psychology, the inner mother is perhaps one of the most hidden yet powerfully influential psychic forces shaping the adult psyche. Jung described this phenomenon as the internalized image or representation of the mother figure, which remains embedded in the unconscious, often completely untouched by conscious experience. While the biological mother ages, dies, or physically leaves life, the inner mother, also called the imago, persists as an autonomous psychic entity. She acts like a silent dictator, subtly influencing behavior, beliefs, emotional patterns, and relationship experiences, often without the individual being aware of her influence. From the very first moments of life, the mother or primary caregiver becomes the child's first relational mirror. Through her gaze, her touch, her voice, and her reactions, the child forms their first sense of self, security, and belonging. Jung proposed that these early interactions are not merely stored as memories, but are crystallized as psychic images that continue to live in the unconscious as part of the mother complex. This complex, over time, becomes the internalized mother imago, a fixed constellation of experiences, emotions, and beliefs linked to the mother figure. This inner image is neither objective nor accurate, but an emotional blueprint reflecting the child's perception of the mother during developmental phases when the psyche was still unformed and highly impressionable. Jung warned that a distorted, neglectful, rejecting, or controlling mother imago becomes a psychic trap, unconsciously governing relationship patterns, self-image, and emotional responses in adulthood. Typical manifestations include a chronic inner critic that repeats the mother's scolding voice, persistent self-sabotage, fueled by unconscious beliefs of not being worthy of love or success, anxious attachment patterns that desperately seek external validation or panic at potential rejection, unconscious loyalty to the internalized mother figure leading to self-betrayal, people-pleasing and self-denial, and repetition of relationship patterns with partners or authorities who embody the traits of the negative inner mother. The tragedy, for Jung, is that many people confuse these inner voices with their true self, failing to realize they are under the spell of an inherited psychological program. One of the most destructive manifestations of the inner mother is the inner saboteur, the voice that whispers, "You're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You'll never succeed. You're selfish if you choose yourself. You're only lovable if you sacrifice your needs." Jung observed that these voices are not mere self-doubt, but projected remnants of the mother complex, acting autonomously within the psyche, hindering the ego from growth, creativity, and individuation. These voices are often insidious and persistent. They appear in moments of vulnerability, transition, or even success, when the emerging self is particularly sensitive. Jung emphasized that the inner mother, if left unconscious, is projected onto other people, especially partners, authorities, spiritual teachers, or friends. This projection happens automatically and unconsciously, leading to dynamics such as expecting partners to provide the unconditional love or acceptance never received from the mother, exaggerated emotional reactions, anger, fear, neediness, when these expectations are disappointed, attraction to partners who mirror the negative mother figure, emotionally unavailable, critical controlling or manipulative, submission to authoritarian personalities whose dominance is mistaken for supposed security. Jung described these projections as emotionally charged and sticky, making it extremely difficult to distinguish between the real person and the projected image. In extreme cases, the mother imago becomes a psychic vampire, draining life energy, creativity, and autonomy. This manifests as chronic exhaustion or depression, paralyzing fear of failure or judgment, indecisiveness due to fear or guilt, emotional numbness, dissociation, or a deep-seated feeling of meaninglessness. Jung warned that this vampire lives in the shadow, feeding on unconscious loyalty to the mother complex, which, though it originated in childhood, continues to dominate the adult self if not brought to consciousness. One of the most painful aspects of the inner mother is the paradoxical form of loyalty she demands from the individual. Even if the mother figure was neglectful, abusive, or emotionally absent, the child internalizes a sacred obligation to remain loyal to her inner image by, for example, sabotaging their own success, making themselves small, invisible, or harmless, choosing suffering as a way of honoring the mother's pain, and avoiding individuation for fear it would be betrayal. Jung saw this as the archetypal wound of the rejected or devoured child, who believes that by remaining close, whether through fantasy, guilt, or self-sacrifice, they will eventually gain the mother's love or recognition. But this is an illusion, because the inner mother is not a living, evolving relationship, but a fixed psychic structure. The more the individual tries to appease her, the deeper they fall into self-denial and psychic fragmentation. Healing the inner mother imago begins with the path of conscious differentiation. Jung emphasized that healing requires a conscious and symbolic separation from the internalized mother figure, not just a physical distancing from the biological mother. This involves naming the mother imago, recognizing her presence as an inner figure separate from one's own self. It includes working with active imagination, allowing the inner mother to surface in dreams, art, or dialogue, expressing suppressed emotions like anger, grief, and longing, setting psychic boundaries, affirming one's self as independent, sovereign, and self-nurturing, and reclaiming projections, that is, recognizing when other people are burdened with expectations that were actually meant for the mother figure. Jung warned that this process is neither linear nor gentle. It often triggers strong emotional upheavals, existential loneliness, identity crises, and inner emptiness. Yet, he stressed that these experiences are necessary deaths of old psychic structures, creating space for the birth of a more authentic self. While confronting the negative mother is central, Jung also stressed the importance of reclaiming the positive aspects of the mother archetype: nurturing, compassion, intuition, creativity, and receptivity. This isn't about idealizing the mother or denying her flaws, but about rebuilding an inner nurturing presence that supports the ego's growth, independent of the wounded mother complex. This can involve developing a kind, supportive inner dialogue, connecting with archetypal representations of the good mother in myths, dreams, or spiritual practices, engaging in creative expressions that honor the feminine principle within oneself, and practicing rituals of self-care, soul nourishment, and emotional affirmation. Jung was convinced that only through this balanced integration, acknowledging both light and shadow of the mother archetype, are psychic wholeness and true individuation possible. The inner mother imago is not just a memory or a feeling, but a living, autonomous force in the unconscious that dictates life as long as it remains unconscious. Healing requires the courageous path of facing this inner figure, breaking her tyranny, mourning what was lost, and reclaiming the ability to mother oneself. This is not just a psychological task, but a spiritual initiation, a rite of passage into adulthood, sovereignty, and the true self. As Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in the realm of the mother complex, this darkness begins with the shadow mother and the inner mother, hidden in the deepest chambers of the soul. Part 4. Separation and the Sovereign Self. Carl Jung was convinced that one of the most vital and painful tasks of human psychological development is the separation from the mother complex, with the goal of developing a sovereign, independent ego. He viewed this process not merely as biological or social maturation, but as a profound spiritual and archetypal journey that defines the individuation process itself. Jung recognized that as long as a person does not symbolically detach from the mother and the internalized mother imago within, they remain trapped in a state of psychic fusion, where the boundaries between self and mother or what she symbolizes, are blurred, distorted, or even non-existent. From a Jungian perspective, psychological separation is not an act of rebellion, rejection, or hatred towards the mother, but an act of psychic self-liberation. Without this separation, the ego cannot form its own center of consciousness. The individual remains trapped in the mother complex, in the roles of the obedient child, the victim, or the conformist. True individuation, the becoming of the unique self, is then impossible. Jung compared this separation to a second birth. While biological birth separates the child from the mother's body, psychological birth frees the individual from the gravitational field of the mother complex, enabling them to become a conscious, autonomous being capable of directing themselves. Despite its necessity, this separation is often vehemently suppressed or avoided, both by the real mother and by the internalized mother imago within the person. Jung cited several reasons for this resistance. Fear of annihilation, the fear that separation equates to abandonment, rejection, or existential emptiness. Guilt and betrayal, the deep-seated archetypal belief that separation means betraying the mother's love, sacrifice, or pain. Comfort and familiarity, remaining within the orbit of the mother complex offers apparent security, albeit a confining one. Cultural reinforcement. In many cultures, loyalty to the family system is valued more highly than individual psychological development. Jung emphasized that these resistances are not merely personal, but deeply rooted in the collective unconscious, and that the task of separation is both individual and universally human. Therefore, detaching from the mother complex is far more than an individual psychological victory. It is an inner act of liberation that breaks the chain of unconscious patterns passed down through generations. When a person finally realizes where the image of the mother ends and the true self begins, space emerges for personal truth, one's own voice, and a life no longer determined by the shadow of the past. This separation does not mean hating or forgetting the mother, but recognizing, honoring, and consciously releasing her psychic power over the adult self. At this moment, the true journey begins, the journey to inner freedom. It's where we no longer ask for permission to exist, where we no longer beg for love, where we no longer override our own boundaries just to stay good. Instead, we learn to mother ourselves, to be present, nurturing, but also clear and decisive. By freeing ourselves from the mother complex, we do not lose connection to the source of life. Rather, we begin to finally live it from within, guided no longer by inherited fears, but by our own center of strength and light. Individuation is an act of courage. It is a psychological and spiritual journey that begins where blind loyalty ends and conscious responsibility for one's self begins. Jung reminded us that one does not become enlightened by avoiding the dark, but by looking at it and recognizing it. And no shadow is deeper or more significant than the one we carry from our relationship with the mother. There, in the shadow, freedom awaits us. What does this deep dive into the mother archetype and the shadow mother stir within you? Have you recognized any of these dynamics in your own life or relationships? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your journey of self-discovery is a powerful one, and your insights can illuminate the path for others. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like, subscribe for more profound discussions on the human psyche, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Thank you for embarking on this vital journey with me. Until next time, keep exploring your inner world.